So now let's start to look at custom operations, where you are fully in control of how things are cut and in what order. These are useful not just for rings, but really for any jewelry where you have an idea how you want to approach it without any sort of automatic interventions, or maybe simply there is no automatic mode that will cover it. So let's start with some simple examples and we'll work our way through them, and I will try to give as best explanation as possible as I can for when each strategy under custom operations is applicable. So for the purposes of our custom operations work, we have this little detail. It's some sort of a geometry. It has decoration on the side, has sharp level, sharp straight walls, and it has a little support they've already added into it. So we begin as before by selecting everything this time and clicking custom operations. We press enter. You'll notice that we're no longer asked for support separately because we're not really assisted by Jewelry Cam's automatic modes. We're simply specifying all the geometry that will have to be milled. If we did not specify this geometry at this stage, we're not able to add it later and have MadCam see it. So you have to make sure that all of your geometry for cutting is included at this stage. Otherwise, you will have to recreate the entire operation. So specify our correct thickness as well as height and click apply. And this time, unlike in the automatic modes, we're just given a completely blank operation list. We are set to create our own. In this lesson specifically, we will cover the first of the strategies, which is cutting on curve. So you have this model, and it exists within a big, or bigger anyways, stock of wax. First reasonable operation to do is to cut away the excess wax, leaving just around approximate this area of the model, so that your bit, no matter which side it is approaching from, is not struggling to get through a bunch of wax. And we do this quite easily by drawing lines with your favorite tool. You could either use your polyline segments or control point curve. It really doesn't matter. Start somewhere on the outside, so if your block is a little wider, you'll still kind of cut through it, and then go around, maybe not quite this far, and create some sort of an outline. You could also use your other favorite commands such as mirror to make sure that these segments are symmetric, though it's not strictly relevant. What is relevant though is that no matter what line you draw, it has to be a single line rather than a set of them. So let's say I have this line. So the idea is that the mill bit is going to come around and cut away everything on this line, so whatever stock we had around it will fall off. This means we have to make sure that the operation is repeated from both sides of the wax, coming in from here and from here. This is quite easy to do. First, we go to Add New Custom Operation, and we're given a selection of patterns. We want Cut on Curve. That's what we select. Press OK. We're asked to select the drive curves. That's what we have highlighted right now. So we press Enter. And before we calculate it, let's just look at the options. We have an option to go a little bit beyond the curve, and I'll show you what it does in a moment. Depth of the cut and number of cuts. Let's make it very, very simple. Let's just say 1 for depth, 1 for number, and beyond curve we'll leave at 0. We'll calculate it, and it doesn't look like much, but if we hide the original line, our can see our toolpath consists of basically cutting around like so. Now, if we specify, for example, 3 for the number of cuts and recalculate, you will see that this is where our depth of our cut comes into play. So now the bit will initially come up 3 of these units, so 3 times 1, 3 millimeters above the curve, cut it this way, will drop down 1, cut this way, and then drop down 1 more, cut this way. So now we've made 3 cuts all along the same line, just slightly different depths. We're still going all from the same angle, meaning from above here, and we're still following this curve. So let's see what happens if we add a certain number of units beyond the curve. Well, now we have displaced this whole cutting way down below. And depending on how much beyond the curve you specify, it will alter your toolpath. May be useful for you, maybe not. You'll find it in practice. What is very useful though is especially for these sort of cutaway rough operations, is to be able to perform this cut from both sides, from the top and the bottom. And unfortunately, Jewelry Cam gives us this little nice button called Create Mirrored Operations. With just one click, we're given a second operation, second toolpath, that's simply this path just reversed from the other side. If we click Calculate, we'll see that it has done the same thing, respecting our number of operations and the depth and the whole bit, just from the other side. So to demonstrate what exactly it will do, let's look at our simulator. These operations are pretty fast because really they're just 3D. There's a specific Z offset and then a 2D cut. So you'll see it cuts 1, 2, 3 lines here, flips it over, 1, 2, 3 lines, and at this point, this excess wax will fall off. If you want to be extra sure that you removed all the excess material, you can also approach it from the other side, meaning position it like so. And as always, to position your bit, you use your C-planes commands, your standard Rhino set C-plane to whatever, and look at your top view. Top view is how you can imagine the tool bit sees things as it's coming down. So if it's coming down this way, you're looking at it from this side. If it's coming down this way, it's looking at this side, like so. So here we can draw, let's use another tool here just to demonstrate here as an example, some kind of a soft curve. And as I mentioned before, you don't have to have it symmetric, although it can be helpful. So here's our other curve. We go once again to add custom operations, cut and curve, click OK. Make sure all our necessary curves are selected, press enter. You see that our previous settings are retained, so number of cuts and the depth. And here, let's do beyond 1 and number of cuts rather to 2. Click apply. And we can see that there's our curve, and we will also mirror it by clicking this create mirrored operation and calculate that. So now let's go back to the simulator one more time and see how our cuts are made. So there is our initial cut, second toolpath, third, and fourth. At this point, these parts will definitely have fallen off, and we have just kind of the rough model of our finalized piece ready to be milled. All the excess material has been trimmed away. This is a very quick set of operations. If you look at it, the estimate is about 3 minutes. This is really the primary use of the cut and curve operations, that is to say, to trim down the stock to a usable level. There are some occasions where you might use it for other purposes, but they are rare, and there are other tools better suited for operations such as engraving. In further lessons, we will cover operations and strategies that are more geared towards finishing rather than roughing of the model.